Hey, good morning. I just pulled into a great parking space at the office. Time for the Parking Lot Podcast, otherwise known as Running Through My Mind. This is Don the Idea Guy. I'm really excited today for episode 13. First of all, 13 is my lucky number. I love 13. Second of all, it's National Coffee Day. Hell yeah, because everything I do is powered by coffee. And third, today, a new podcast interview that I did on somebody else's show called No Permission Needed is the name of the podcast, with your host, Ozeal, who I had a chance to meet. He found me on the Side Hustle Nation podcast interview I did. He found me through there. Nick Loper, the host of that show, put him in touch with me. But Ozeal's just this great guy. I had so much fun talking to him. I've already tweeted out the link to that first thing this morning when the episode dropped. So it's in the Don the Idea Guy Twitter account if you want to stop listening to this right now and go listen to that podcast, because it's a way better podcast than this one. And it was just a lot of fun. We started out talking about one thing and ended up talking about something else, and really had a chance to talk about some of the people who have inspired me and some of the concepts that have inspired me along the way on my journey of becoming the idea guy. So it was a lot of fun. It was not planned, not scripted. Ozeal just conducts a fantastic interview. I had so much fun. When we sat down, he said, it'll be about 30 minutes, and it was 60 minutes later before we finally had to go. That's enough. We got to stop. So hopefully we're going to pick up and continue that conversation later, because it was just a great time. So it being National Coffee Day, and me being the idea guy, this is a great episode to talk about beanstorming in. I mentioned it briefly in the interview with Ozeal, and I've written about it and talked about it extensively in other media, but I haven't talked about it on my own podcast yet. So episode 13 on National Coffee Day is a perfect place to do it. I find that for years of coming up with ideas for people, businesses, individuals, myself, coming up with ideas with friends, anytime I was coming up with ideas, there was one common thread through all of them, and that was coffee. No matter who I was talking to, we came up with more ideas, better ideas, greater quantity, greater quality. Everything was just greater with coffee. So that's this common thread, and I started drawing the analogy between brainstorming, coming up with ideas, and brewing coffee. And since my favorite thing to do was drink coffee and come up with ideas, I coined this term beanstorming for coffee beans, if you were slow. But I know that none of my listeners were. I don't know why I felt the need to explain it, but it's like I told a joke and then went, get it? So, get it? Beanstorming. I came up with 7 rules of beanstorming. I've got 12 principles and guidelines for what the beanstorm process is, and this is not scripted, so I'm not going to read off that list, but there are very similar concepts. One of the things that I'm going to point out just a few important points of the beanstorm process in no particular order. One of them is, if you want to come up with a really good idea, the quote is, you come up with a lot of ideas. Linus Pauling, I believe, said something along the lines of, if you want to come up with a good idea, you come up with lots of ideas. The same applies when you're brewing coffee, right? So if you're going to brew coffee, you can't just pick one perfect bean and have a cup of coffee. You need a bunch of beans, and there's some good beans in there, and there's some awesome beans in there, and there's some mediocre beans in there, and all together it brews up this great cup of coffee. But it was never one bean that did it. The other is brew time. So you want to set aside a perfect amount of time to think up ideas. Coffee breaks have time limits. 15 minutes, half hour coffee break. Same goes with beanstorming. Set a time. When I get together for my one-to-one beanstorms, we always say it's going to be 60 to 90 minutes. And inevitably, it ends up being 2 hours, but it doesn't feel that way. It goes way more quickly than you imagine when you just start bouncing around ideas. You get excited about the concepts, and the time goes on. But at some point, you have to go. Like at the 2 hour mark, you go, okay, we're done. Because, and this leads to another principle, you don't want to put a empty pot back on the burner. So we've probably all worked in one of those offices where somebody took just a little bit of the coffee, there's just a tiny bit left, so they put it back in the burner, and it bakes, and it releases this really acrid smell, and everybody knows exactly what that smell is. The only thing worse than a empty coffee pot burning and crackling is like burnt popcorn in the office. So you can do that with your brain too. So if you just wring every single last idea from your brain before you're just exhausted and you finally have to stop because you feel drained, like somebody took your brain in between their two hands and wrung it out like a washcloth, that's bad. You always want to stop when you still feel there's more ideas, because when you stop brainstorming, your brain doesn't stop thinking about it. So even though your organized brainstorm might be over and you split from your brainstorm partner, your brain's still going to be percolating, another nice coffee term, your brain's still going to be percolating ideas, and you just write them down. You're not formally brainstorming, you're not forcing yourself to do it, and that's going to happen probably for the next hour or two. For me, it happens for the next week or two. These extra ideas just keep popping in your brain. It's those extra last drops, right, that come out of the coffee brewer whenever you're brewing. You think you can pull the pot away, but as soon as you do, like 3 more drops of coffee come out and hit the burner. So you want to stop while you still feel you have ideas to go, and you never want to put that empty pot back on the burner. There was a writer, and I can't remember which writer, but it was somebody big, like a Stephen King or a Patterson or somebody, and they said that they always stopped writing while they still had something else to say, while they still had the next line in their head, because now they knew when they went back to their computer the next day, they knew exactly where to pick up where they left off, because they knew what they were going to start with rather than sitting down in front of a blank sheet and just wondering where they were going to start. And I always thought that was a great principle, and I found it to be true in the Beanstorm process too. The other is filtering comes last. You know, when you get those beans, when you're choosing the beans and then you're grinding them up and you're filling the coffee maker with water and you're getting the pot underneath it ready to capture the coffee as it brews, the last thing that happens before that coffee comes through and lands in the pot is filtering. Filtering is the absolute last thing you do. And we talked a little bit about this in episode 12, yesterday's episode, about the separation of idea generation and idea evaluation. And filtering is idea evaluation. So you want to keep the filtering till last. Next, coffee is always better when you add little extras, right? So I love black coffee, but I have found that I enjoy it just a little bit more, depending on the coffee blend, if I add some coconut milk creamer to it. It just has this unique flavor, and I like it. The other is, it's October right now. If you're listening to this in order and in schedule as I release them, it's October, or just outside October. It's the end of September. And Starbucks, around this time of year, I think on the first day of fall they do it, release the pumpkin spice latte. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the pumpkin spice latte, but many, many others are. And if they are fans of that, it's because of the little extras of the pumpkin spice, right? And the latte and the steamed milk they add to it. So it can make, little extras can make good coffee better to your palate, or can customize it to your needs and likes. The same with ideas. You can add little extras to an idea to build on the concept. For instance, publishing books is an idea, right? But once you start adding, well, let's do an audiobook. It's a little extra that can add to your book sales. Let's do an ebook. It adds a little extra. Let's do a webinar based on the book and talk about the concepts. Let's do a book club. Those are all little extras added on to your book. Now, just like coffee, the little extras aren't going to make the idea any better, right? So the adding cream to bad coffee is still bad coffee with a lot of milk in it, right? So the same principle applies to the coffee. The same principle that applies to the coffee applies to the ideas. If it's a bad idea, adding more bells and whistles to it isn't going to make it a good idea. Let's talk about the Zune. Does anybody remember the Zune? I mean, there were iPods, and the iPods were awesome, and Microsoft said, we could do an iPod. Here's a great big brown brick that plays music. And I really don't even think Bill Gates' mom bought one. I just don't. So Bad ideas are bad ideas, but little extras can make good ideas great ideas. Now, let's hit one final point. There are more to this. Maybe I'll post a link to the seven steps. I'm working on a book for the Beanstorming idea barista kind of concept, and hopefully we'll have that out. It's been almost done for a year, so maybe I can almost finish it and get it one step closer. The final thing is, ideas like coffee are better when you share them with friends. So when you have coffee by yourself, it's good, it's delicious, but you pretty much just go, coffee. When you share coffee with a friend, you're catching up on old times, you're coming up with new plans, you're catching up on what's going on with the family, you're trading ideas, which is great. That's the whole point of the coffee and creativity. But coffee, like ideas, are better shared with friends, because when I share an idea with a friend and they share an idea with me, we both have two ideas. It's additive, not subtractive. So if you can get 5 people to share coffee, you're all going to walk away with more ideas. It's not a one-to-one proposition, right? And I think that's all I'm going to say on that topic. I will say, if you want to experience a Beanstorm, you can go to dontheidea.com/brainstorm. Or there's a brainstorm tab right on the Don the Idea Guy website, and there's a formal offer to do a Beanstorm, whether you're local to me or I'm going to be in your area where we can get together in person, or we can just each grab a cup of coffee and jump on Skype. It's a fun session. It's highly interactive. I ask you questions, you give me feedback, I give you ideas, you give me more feedback, I give you more ideas, and pretty soon we're both popping on ideas. The only caveat is, has to be high test coffee. No decaf, my friends, no decaf. All right, that's it for running through my mind today. Go listen to my interview with Oziel. We had a lot of fun. And I think you'll enjoy it too. I'll post a link to that in the show notes, and I'll be back tomorrow for episode 14 of Running Through My Mind. If you want to connect with me, just go to dontheideaguy.com and send me an email, send me a tweet. I would love to connect and know that you're one of the 3 people, the proud 3 listeners of this web show. Mom, I already got your email. It's cool. You don't have to send me the note. Bye-bye.